Hello, my name is Anne Russell and I'm from the Russell Family Fetal Alcohol Disorders Association. I'm streaming a series of videos on FASD on various aspects and their specific aspects, so if there's something that people want to know, they should be able to go straight to the particular video. This one today is about teaching students with FASD for teachers and educators. This is a subject that I know is very close to the heart of many parents. School is primarily where children are likely to begin their nightmare journey to secondary disabilities and where teachers will play such a huge part in whether or not that happens. But first I have to say that if a student has the history of a person with FASD and he behaves as though he or she has FASD and there are no other diagnoses unless it's ADHD, then it should be considered to be FASD in terms of environmental accommodations and interventions. The level of functioning of a child with FASD is much clearer at school than anywhere else. Prenatal alcohol exposure that results in central nervous system problems affects the student's ability to successfully complete their studies at most levels, but it becomes most clear in the higher grades. The level of function of the child does not correlate with their IQ. So if they know who the Prime Minister is, if they know all the kings and queens of England, it doesn't mean they don't have FASD. It just means that they're one of the 75% of people with FASD who don't have an intellectual disability. There are several issues which impact most severely on schoolwork and the connection with peers. I'll try to be fairly succinct with each item, as there are 13 of them. It's critical that teachers are aware of these issues and watch their students closely if behaviour or learning difficulties are present. My son Seth will speak at various times throughout this video on the various subjects that I'm going to be talking about. So the first one is sensory dysfunction. This may cause the individual to react differently to stimuli. For example, they may be easily overwhelmed by sensory input from posters on the wall or mobiles hanging on the ceiling, or they may be distracted by sounds coming from outside the classroom or even inside, such as the ticking of a clock, and they may overreact to a slight touch. The second is dysmaturity. And this will cause a child to function at a much younger level than their chronological age. For example, an 18-year-old with FASD will operate at the level of a 16-year-old with their reading ability, an 11-year-old in daily living skills, a 6-year-old in understanding language, and a 7-year-old in social skills. So they will often not have a lot of friends. At 18, if you behave as a 17-year-old socially with your peers, a lot of that is going to happen. The third is language problems, and this will cause the perception that the student understands what's being said. This is because the expressive language ability of a person with FASD is usually quite good, giving the impression of competence. Instead of saying they don't understand, the child is more likely to agree, to argue, to say they actually do understand, to confabulate, or to talk excessively.
When I was at school, I learned how to fake that I sort of knew what people were talking about. If the teachers or somebody was talking about a certain subject that I sort of didn't really understand, I would just fake it and say, yeah, I do understand. And I just hope to God that they didn't ask me to explain that, because I wouldn't have any idea of how to explain it, or I didn't understand what they were even talking about. But to try and sort of, I don't know, to fit in or to make it seem like I was smarter than I was, I would say that I did understand. And that's happened quite a lot, even sometimes even up to today.
Slow auditory pace is the next one. Children with FASD who have normal hearing can appear as though they have problems with their hearing because of the time it takes them to answer a question. It's actually a processing problem and doesn't relate to hearing per se. They just take time to process language. They're 10-second children in a 1-second world. The next one is impaired judgment. And children with FASD have difficulty making decisions and solving problems. They can often make decisions that are unsafe or inappropriate. Sometimes they have trouble making decisions at all. In fact, if you give a child with FASD 3 options, they probably won't be able to decide between the 3 things or which one they want to do. An inability to generalize information. This can cause a lot of problems for the child because what happens is they can learn something in one location but won't be able to transfer that learning or remember that particular thing in a different location. So if they learn subjects at school in their classroom, if they have to go to a different room for an exam, they may not be able to remember the things they've learned in the classroom. The next one is damage to the executive function area of the brain, which is in the frontal lobe, just here. And it's one of the most difficult problems to manage. An injury in this area, which is typical for a child with FASD, will mean that the child will have difficulty planning, organising, predicting what will happen next, sequencing, initiating activities and following through. It can also compromise their ability to understand cause and consequence and comply with rules. Perseveration, we've talked about this in a different video, and this may cause a child to become stuck on a subject or an activity and not be able to shift focus. It can also make them rigid about a variety of things, including the food they eat. I know one child who would only eat yogurt for 12 months, nothing else, or they may only eat junk food. Impulsivity is the next one, and when it's combined with the inability to understand abstractions and predict consequences, safety can be a problem. It also means that they can act first and then be unable to see the reason that it all fell apart for them, or that they got a negative response from peers or teachers. Being concrete children in the here and now means they cannot understand abstract concepts. So this is the next issue, understanding the abstract concept. We use them all the time, we don't think anything about them. They're things like idiom, which is don't beat around the bush, it's raining cats and dogs, that sort of thing. And time and money are also fairly abstract. So children with FASD might have difficulty getting to class on time, and some maths is fairly abstract, so children with FASD will often have difficulty with math. One of the toughest problems for teachers to understand and manage is the inconsistent memory and performance of a child with FASD. So they can work well on a particular subject one day, but completely forget it the next. And it looks like the child is just misbehaving, when in fact they have completely forgotten what they learned the previous day. But then they may remember it a couple of days, in the future, and then forget it again, and then remember it again. So it must be equally as frustrating for the child as it is for the teacher. So memory problems, forming associations, consolidation and integration, and difficulty learning from past experience can cause mistakes to be repeated over and over. Punishment will never cause the child to remember something or not make the same mistake again. Punishment doesn't work. In fact, it hurts. It's critical that family and teachers understand this. Think about a child who is blind. No amount of punishment will make that child be able to see. The same is true of a brain injury, where parts of the brain are missing or unable to do the job they typically do. No amount of punishment will work on a child with FASD. There needs to be changes in the expectations of the family, teachers and educators, and changes to the environment to accommodate a child with FASD, just as it requires a change in the environment to accommodate a child with poor vision. Thank you very much.